And were your parents, were they supportive of you when you decided that comedy was your track? Did they support you, or did you have to convince them that this is what you wanted to do?
I think I had to convince myself, and them along the way. But I think that we, my parents were always, you know, anything I wanted to do artistically, they were really supportive of it. And then they would say, it's amazing that you have this hobby, and this is a great hobby, but then you're gonna have to, you know,
Yeah.
figure out.
عاوزينك تبقى
Yeah,
دكتور.
I think that was the early thing, was be a doctor, and then
Yeah,
they realized there
yeah,
was no way I had the focus for that, and then they started to think, okay, you know, you could be a
yeah,
lawyer, and I
yeah.
didn't know. I felt the same though. I felt I couldn't imagine it being a career. I wasn't a kid that saw it on TV and said that's going to be me. I didn't really think that could be
Mhm, mhm.
a path, especially because I think I felt the pressure of understanding what it meant for the parts of the family that did come to America. The weight of what it was, and there was
Yeah,
this
yeah.
expectation of, let's make it worth it. And so the idea that
Of course.
I would go down a path that not even I didn't know anyone who had gone down it. I didn't know anyone who knew anyone. Like there was no, it didn't
Sure,
feel
sure.
connected to anything at all, and so it didn't even feel like a possibility. Um, and yeah, so I was doing like a lot of theater and writing, and I kind of informally started doing comedy in high school. We had this amazing TV program, and I would, do a lot of. I was really obsessed with cameras, since I was like 12. It was the first thing I
Mhm,
bought with my Eid and Ramadan money. I bought a camera, uh, and then the next
mhm.
year, maybe 2 years after that, I bought a guitar, and then I would like film myself and film certain things or whatever. So I was really into making
Mhm.
things, and then I think it started to turn
Yeah,
comedic and started to do
yeah.
all that, and I started. I think I first performed comedy on stage like my last year of high school, when I would go to New York, and I had friends who had graduated and they started doing it. And so it was all like, looking back, it's pretty clear that it was the only thing I was doing. But while I was doing it, I kept thinking there was going to be this hard end date in which I would stop doing it, and then
Yeah,
real life
yeah.
would begin.
That you were just playing
Yeah.
around. I wanna get into, the show, and I I watched it when it first came out, and I didn't get it. I just didn't understand it. I watched about 4 episodes, and I just was like, I don't get it. And then when we were going to, do our interview together, I said, "Okay, I have to do my research. I have to figure out, who is this guy? What does it all mean?" And I binged it. I could not put it down. It was just so smart, and so uh everything was in there. It was drama. It made you cry, it made you laugh, it made you question, it just makes you wonder about so many different things. And I want to get into that with you in a second, but I want to backtrack for a second and go back a little bit in time again to when you were 11. And I think that was, you were 11 on 9/11. Is that right?
About, yeah, I think that was the age. Yeah, I was like 10 or
About
11. Yeah,
11?
11.
Yeah. And and I want to ask you, yeah, I want to ask you about that particular event, and how that changed you, and how that changed for you the way people perceived you uh, in your school, because the episode you did around that subject was extremely powerful, I thought. And I wondered whether you had a similar experience, and whether that was shaping for you in how you looked at yourself as an Arab American.
um yeah, it did. I mean, and I think that the way I like to describe the show is like, it's very a lot of emotional facts. I think we've obviously like dramatized a lot in order to, weave in other characters and create something that I think, especially after the first season, realized, okay, this is something that we want to be like a 3 to 4 season journey. And so we kind of put the characters through things that are not, real, I mean, in the sense of, autobiographical. But the things that are
Hmm.
always really real to me are
Sure.
the, emotional questions and feelings and conversations. And I think that, the job of a show like this is to take it and um, turn it into something that, can feel uh, connecting. So I think in terms of that particular
Hmm.
episode, um, that one, I mean, I I used to have a walkie-talkie when I was a kid because my mom didn't want to do the cell phone bill. Like that was pure
I love
prime,
that. I love that.
save money, kind of thing. Save money, but still want the features. And I used to have this nightmare about Osama bin Laden, just feeling those things of being in a community where people look at you like you might have something to do with it. And then I used to have these like really vivid nightmares. And then, yeah, in the episode, I mean, we essentially recreated that nightmare to the point where it
Hmm.
looked like it looked in my head when I was a kid. It was probably one of the most surreal moments I had as a director, to direct a scene that looked exactly like it looked in my head, like this thing that had haunted me for a really long time. And I remember seeing it, and I was really creeped out when I saw it. And then I looked around when we were shooting it, and everyone was really creeped out as well. And that was really interesting, where I was like, oh whoa, I'm kind of I
Wow.
didn't tell anyone to feel what
Wow.
I'm feeling, and they're all feeling what I'm feeling. Like, people were like, we gotta, like, can we
Yeah.
take a
Yeah.
smoke break? Like, people, I saw people smoking who I'd never even seen smoking, like, the whole time we were shooting. So it was
Wow.
like one of those, like,
Wow.
everyone's just like,
Because they were all feeling it from their own perspectives, right? And they were all feeling it from their own side,
yeah,
right?
I think
Yeah.
so. And I think there was something there that yeah, just touched on yeah, touched on something that continues to be raw, for everybody, from a lot of
Hmm.
perspectives.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, yeah, it was it was a big formative part of the show, um, to get to do that, and I think it I'm curious, though, like, what was different for you the first time you watched it versus watching it in preparation for this? Like to go from not getting it to getting it.
Uh, I think because I didn't watch enough of it the first time
Right.
around, and I think it's a kind of show that's a slow burn.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to watch the first episode and be like, yeah, that's, I get it. I think it's something you have to invest time in, because each character is so developed and each character is so well formed, and you're rooting for certain people, and you're actually rooting for everyone, even when they're clearly unappealing or not very pleasant, and you're thinking, well, there's
Right.
a silver lining in here somewhere. There's got to be a good part to this guy, right? And you just become really attached to these characters. I wonder whether this issue of religion and identity that you grapple with in the show is from the fact that you grew up in a post 9/11 world. I wonder whether you would have had those same kinds of questions if you had grown up in a pre 9/11 world, like I did, where we were taught to just assimilate, get on with it, not to make identity or religion such a big thing in terms of how to be in the society we're living in. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
And I wonder whether maybe that was the experience of your parents as opposed to yours, for example.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. And I think even, I think the reason I asked you too, yeah, why, like, I think you got at it really correctly. Like, I could understand it not feeling gripping to you initially because it's a different thing, right? It's like there are people
Exactly.
who watch it and yeah, really. I mean, also especially too when it's like people talk about the show like you know oh, this is a thing for Arabs and this is a thing for Muslims, as if it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
essential, required, whatever. Like I'm very sympathetic to the feeling
Exactly.
of like feeling like you need to turn it on and then feel like, oh wow, this is, my thing and my food. And I think that that's,
Yeah.
kind of like the inescapability of marketing and the reality of the
Hmm.
lack of options, at least in
Exactly.
America, that have been present. I think
And for
obviously if you
now,
look,
for sure.
yeah, and that's for now, and that's already changed since we've made the show, and we're it's something we're I am very invested in, in making a bunch of things that don't look like that, that look just like different
Hmm.
things. Um, and I think that so in this particular story, for me, as the show has happened and kind of, what I've been really loving exploring with the character of Ramy is, yeah, he has this identity crisis. Um, and I think it totally is because this event happens in such formative years, so it's really, this it's like an embryo of sorts in terms of how you present to the world. If you're 10 or 11 years old, you're really sensitive. And I think that for a lot of people in the generation that I grew up in, this is very much the case. And I think that's where we kind of connect on how this character is frayed. And for me, the series has really been, how do we take these big questions he's having about who he is and which way he should go. Um, as the series goes on, that conversation kind of
Yeah.
dies. It dies because those conversations kind of always have to die, and then you get to a core of just, well, how do you want? It's not who am I, but it's like how do I want to be? And
Hmm. Hmm.
what do I actually care about, and just what am I going to do? And I think there is a bit of an ego death and an identity crisis death for the Ramy character. But I think above all, to me, this show, more so than being for Arabs or about Arabs or for Muslims or about Muslims or any of that, is a spiritual journey. Like I think it is about a character reconciling with what he can see and what he can't see, and living for his desires or having the spiritual path. And that's what I wanted to do when I made this show. I didn't really want to represent Arabs or Muslims or anyone like that, as much as I really set out with this very clear intention of, oh, I want to show in a way that doesn't feel fantastical, that doesn't feel sanitized, that doesn't feel safe, that doesn't feel fake. The relationship that someone has with their relationship with God. And I think that's why, as we've made the show, I've heard from people who are not only Muslim, but who are Christian, who are Jewish, who are Hindu, who are all figuring out their way and their path with their faith path. An extreme
Hmm.
resonance with them, especially the ones who are struggling, not the ones who are like already got it figured out. I think if you already
Sure.
got it figured out, it's like, what's the point of
Sure.
the show? You're like, you're an
Sure.
idiot.
Sure.
But I think it's very much like people who are like open to that
But
idea of that.
Of course. But I also think that by working across all the jobs, or the you're introducing all the Arab voice across so many parts of the industry, you're going to be doing for the Arab voice what the Hispanics have been doing in entertainment for the last 30 years. It's going to become de facto the norm, and it's going to become understandable and just part of the ecosystem, and not something that's different. But you are a pioneer now. In a few years, it's going to become normal, right? That's the intention, I guess.
Totally. I think the intention is that that what we're fighting for is going to be just continued nuance and expression, and not just the general seat at the table. I think that is something that we can, put behind us. It's not going to be about scarcity. It's truly going to just be about the art and the nuance of it. And I think what can come from that too is not feeling like every piece of art needs to be wholly representative or needs to be the flag for a people. It can just be art for art's sake, because we've gotten the chance to,
Exactly.
have
Exactly.
our image
Yeah.
in a modern media, have a foundation.